This is Radiant Voices Media.
Hey there, and welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast, where I'll be talking with a new guest each week, and we'll be covering topics in health, fitness, lifestyle, and so much more. So stick around and let's get into today's episode. Hey everyone, I want to tell you about a brand called Rehab, the sunglasses made by runners for runners. Born in Sydney, Rehab was built with one goal in mind: to create sunnies that actually keep up with you. Whether you're hitting a sunrise tempo session or grinding through a weekend-long run, Rehab delivers crystal clear lens tech, lightweight frames, and durability that doesn't quit, no matter how many times you sweat through them or stuff them in your bag. They offer a range of lens shades and technology to suit all conditions. From bright road races to shaded trails, there's no slipping, no bouncing, just solid performance and style. So if you're tired of sunglasses that can't go the distance, it's time to rethink your eyewear. Check them out at reyourrun.com.au and use code Jordan10 for a little something off your first pair. That's code Jordan10 to save yourself 10% off your first pair. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode. In today's episode, we're talking about something that doesn't get enough credit, and that's the value of having a coach focusing on the right aspects of rehab. Because coaching just isn't about getting a workout plan or someone counting your reps. It's about having someone who helps you save time, avoid mistakes, and actually helps you move forward. My guest today is Ollie Peake, a men's and women's fitness coach and founder of Peake Performance, known for his movement-based approach to training, injury prevention, and sustainable results. We dive into what makes great coaching truly effective, how mindset and habits play a role in long-term progress, and why investing in the right coach might actually save some money in the long run. This is one of those conversations that goes beyond just the training. It's about building a better relationship with your health, with your body, and your performance. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
Listening maybe a little bit too intently.
Yeah.
So I needed to sort of like pull it back and find a happy medium.
You get quite picky, don't you?
I do. Yeah, it's the way it goes.
But thanks for coming on, Ollie. For the listener listening right now, if they have an autobiography out in front of them of you, maybe let the listener know what they would read in that autobiography. So let us know a little bit about yourself.
Good question, man. Yeah, what was the show on TV back in the day? I've got to think of it. Essentially, it's this sort of thing where they create this sort of like autobiography about someone in front of them and bringing everything to the table.
Wow, okay.
Which would have been an experience. I would say pretty straightforward. Like, I'm a pretty simple dude, to be honest. In terms of my upbringing, I guess. I got 3 brothers in a pretty standard household. Awesome mum, awesome dad. But a pretty like intense household, I guess, considering, having 4 boys in the one family. Yeah. And mum could probably attest to that as well. In terms of like how it would sort of trend, I think like we were speaking about just before, it kind of goes through these different phases up until the point where I'm at now, which is very sort of, I guess, balanced and calm and relaxed. The 20s, I feel like we're a little bit more chaotic at times by nature of just wanting to do like a lot of things. But I sort of just fell into the position I'm in now from a love of training, really. And like I've said to you, like I'm a bit of a gym bro at heart, but what I like to think with a little bit of substance as well. versus just sending it all the time, which is actually, I guess, maybe part of the story and how I ended up here. But yeah, I would say it like reads pretty similarly to like the way a lot of people experience uh, their life and going through these different stages. Um, yeah, so maybe that wasn't all inspiring, and yeah. I'd have to map out the chapters
Yeah.
for sure because there are a few chapters in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a good question. Something I'd probably
Mm.
have to think about a little bit more.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think like we don't think we. I think like reflection is something that yes we all practice, but like we don't
Mm.
actually think about the nicks and crannies and what we've gone through in the past to
Mm.
bring us to the points that we are. And like some people's answer could be hours, and some people, just could be 5 minutes.
I'm terrible
Like
at reflecting, man.
yeah.
So I think it probably feeds into the answer I gave you, which is
Yeah.
not so much.
Where did your love for the fitness scene start?
Mm,
So
mm.
maybe like bring us back to the time of your life when you started getting into health and fitness.
Yeah, it actually, like, I can pull it back a long way when it comes to health and fitness. So essentially, when I was going to primary school, and this is probably, yeah, sort of between 5 and 10 years old, um, we actually used to live around the corner from a news agency down at Glenelg. And when we would walk down there and have a look at the magazine section and all this sort of stuff, um, like you'd sort of like sift through the magazines, and a lot of it was actually like PC mags and stuff like this because they gave the free CD for the games and stuff. So go through those. But I would see these like bodybuilding magazines or like men's health magazines and this sort of thing. Um, and I think I just saw like the covers of these magazines, and I kind of like, wanted to emulate what I was seeing on the cover of those magazines. Not from a sense like a vanity standpoint, but more so just like, they look strong and jacked, and like maybe masculine in a way. And it was something that sort of like caught my attention really early. And so pulling it back to primary school, and I remember doing this quite vividly before all of us boys would jump in the car to go to Stella Maris, which was the primary school. Shouts out Stella Maris. Um, I'd quickly sneak into mum and dad's bedroom and just do 50 push-ups, like before we would go to school on the day. And I would do this religiously. And I wouldn't even think about, um, like, I wasn't really thinking too much into it besides, like, it just made me feel good. And this is when I was, between 5 and 10 years old. And once again, not sort of like putting too much thought into what I was doing. I'm just like, it makes me feel good, um, makes me feel strong. Um, and it was something that I actually enjoyed. So that's probably, I guess, the first experiences that I can recall um, of like getting into health and fitness at the very ground level. But then I think the continuation of that was maybe in middle school. I knew training was important to be strong, build muscle, these sorts of things, but had no idea what I was doing. But I remember having a conversation with my dad about wanting to build muscle and framing it as though it was important to get better at my sport, which in fact it is, but that's not what I was thinking about in that instance. And so I asked him if he would take me to a supplement store to get protein because I'd heard that protein is good for building muscle and all these sorts of things, along with creatine as well. Yeah. And this is, maybe what, 15-year-old me at the time, with not too much information, purely just, going on what I'd heard. And so dad took me to a place called Australian Muscle, which was a store on Goodwood Road. Um, and we went in there looking for protein and for creatine. And I remember the bloke behind the desk, like giving the standard, like supplement store guy spiel to us about why it's so important. And like, I remember when he reached to the shelf to actually grab some protein and some creatine, I remember him reaching and like his tricep just hanging down off of his arm. And like vividly, once again, I remember being in that store and just going, holy shit, like that's what I want, brother. so he could have given me anything on the day and I would have been, ingesting it. But, and like, let's be honest, he was jacked to the point where maybe he was taking things beyond protein and creatine. Um, but at the same time, I was kind of sold, like at that moment in time. Um, Once again, no idea what I was doing. And the creatine, like I would actually take this creatine separate to the protein. And I remember just like cranking it down the hatch, going like, I need to be doing this shit. And
Yeah.
just sort of throwing it down, like the shitty protein, like clumping up. You basically need like a knife and fork to like eat it
Yeah.
out of the shaker
It
sort
was
of thing.
very different back
It was
then.
bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of how it started. And once
Yeah.
again, I can't really like pull it back. Like I was a super skinny kid. Like I was reasonable at sports. But a super skinny guy, like sort of 2D from side on skinny,
Yeah.
like just a small guy,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Quite tall. So probably existing in this like lanky category. And I just remember hating that, like that was just, it was not something I enjoyed, or like a position I enjoyed existing in. So I was kind of just doing everything I possibly could to kind of like, I guess, like move outside of that category into like the mesomorph category. You've got the body types and everything, which I actually bought into a lot when I was younger, you know. And so I would consider myself to be somewhat of like a hard gainer, like um, in that group. But yeah, it's so a little bit of body image, a little bit experience, and just kind of, failing forwards and then eventually going to uni and studying human movement, exercise science, and then really just falling into personal training almost by accident. Just seeing a sign on a gym window one day about studying personal training, and just doing the simple math, like shit, I love training, and I love being around people as well, just chatting to people, this sort of thing, knowing nothing about business at all.
Right.
At all. Yeah. Real dumpster fire when it came to that idea of business and this sort of thing. But yeah, man, just sort of made things work along the way, up until the point where I am now, which, like I said, like living the dream, love my job, love my life. I got this, awesome business that I run with my twin brother and my fiance Mira.
Hey everyone, Jordan here. If you're like me, always pushing for that next level in training, recovery, and overall wellness, then you know the right fuel makes all the difference. That's why I'm excited to share my go-to for clean, powerful nutrition, Tropeaka. Tropeaka's range of certified organic supplements is packed with high-quality ingredients designed to fuel your body and elevate your performance. Whether you need a protein boost post-workout, an energy kick to get you through the day, or gut-loving superfoods to keep you feeling your best, Tropeaka has you covered. I personally love their lean protein because it helps my recovery without the heavy bloating feeling I get from these other proteins that I've had in the past. Plus, everything is free from artificial nasties, so I know exactly what I'm putting in my body. If you're ready to take your health and performance to the next level, check out Tropeaka today at tropeaka.com.au. And because I love hooking up all of my listeners, use code JORDSDAY10 for a special discount at checkout. That's JORDZDAY10 at checkout for a special discount. Fuel your body and power your life. Tropeaka has your back. Thanks, you all.
Like almost wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest.
And I think that's like, I think a lot of males at that age, when you're 15 through maybe 19 or whatever, experience something similar, right? Like that's a pivotal point where, I think back to me, I think it was a bit later, like growing up doing athletics, the classic Canadian sports, ice hockey, lacrosse and whatnot. Like when that sport in Canada is a lot different, when you graduate high school, it's kind of done. Like you don't really have footy leagues or hockey leagues or whatever like you do here. So I think a lot of males in Canada might trend to the gym
Mm.
after that, right? So for me, it was 18, 19 when I started, and that's when I went through similar. I was like the skinny guy. I'm still the skinny guy, but back then the goal was to put as much mass on as
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember, like the mass gainers and like whatever what was it, like 4 scoops or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever, and
yeah.
like this much
Yeah,
water, and like that was disgusting
yeah,
thinking
yeah.
back to that.
That shit sucks.
Um like I think it was back then for me more for aesthetics and wanting to
Mm,
look like the bigger man or whatever. And I think it evolved over the years.
mm.
When I became a PT myself, um I think like training other people, you learn at a young age. I think I was 19 when I became a personal trainer, and like you learn very quickly um, about health and fitness because you're preaching it, but at the same time you're 19 and you don't really know a whole lot, right? So
For
you
sure.
kind of have to go and you kind of have to do your own research and your own growth as well. So I think that's a very common story for males really.
Mm.
Um, what where did your coaching and where did your personal training kind of start and how did that kind of come to be?
Yeah, like I said, I actually walked into the gym that I was like a frequent member at the time, which was mid to late 20s. I think it was around maybe 26, 27. And there was a sign like in the gym about training to be a personal trainer. And I wish it had have like I'd had this epiphany years earlier, because particularly in my early 20s, it was kind of this phase of my life where I wasn't so sure what I was going to do long term, which is not necessarily an issue. Like there's never a rush with this sort of thing. But yeah, I was just a little bit lost about maybe my calling or something that I wanted to pursue at this point in time. So, like we spoke about, did a lot of traveling, visited a lot of places, um, but that was sort of a means to an end, just to experience different things, meet new people. Um, but yeah, walking into the gym, saw the sign, and yeah, it almost clicked straight away. And I thought, because training for me never felt like a chore, it was always something that was quite like consistent throughout any phase of my life that I was in. Um, I could progress that into potentially a career. And once again, like there was no deep thought around it at that point in time. It was just, I love training. Let's do the same thing and earn money through training other people, right? Um, and yeah, I was so shit when I started because basically all I would do. Am I allowed to swear on this thing here? Fuck. All right, sweet, sweet. Yeah, like basically I would just train people the way I like to train.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I was training just to get jacked, like, gym bro spec. Um, I think like at that point, a little bit more advanced than what I'd been in, say, my early and mid 20s, but still very much just sort of going with the flow. Um, and at that stage, I actually hadn't had coaching myself either. So a lot of the training styles or methods that I was employing was purely just, in line with my own biases and how I like to do things, which was great, and a lot of the people that I was working with, had similar goals, like kind of, you get a range of people at big box gyms because at that stage I was working at a big box gym, Gym Glenelg, Genesis, yeah, Um, but yeah, that's kind of where it started. Um, I do remember initially though, because I just had this pipe dream of just being a coach full time and coaching people to get strong, get jacked, and having this expectation that everyone else loved training as much as I do, and it couldn't have been further from reality. Like what actually is, you know, um, I guess reality for a lot of people, which is sometimes it's actually hard to get up and go to the gym, you know, and it does exist to people as almost a bit of a chore or something like this. So I guess the way I ran the coaching side of my business was accepting of the fact that, like people like obviously have their own goals when it comes to health and fitness, and it's accommodating those things and listening to them and then mapping out the best road for them to achieve those goals. But yeah, the business side of things just took ages to click in because, man, I remember my first like interview that I had with a prospective client, and it was just a shit show, man. Like it was honestly, I wish someone had filmed this because the gym basically like gave you these referrals or these leads, and you would chase them up and basically do what you wanted. Um, and because we were essentially running our own businesses out of the gym, and so yeah, like I'm freaking out, going like, holy shit, like I've actually got to sit down with these people and have a chat about training. And at this point, it's not even something that actually crossed my mind, like having to actually not really sell my services or my product. And at that stage, I didn't really know what my product was. Um, and sitting down with this, so it was a daughter and her mum, and having a chat. And I had this little booklet, like this questionnaire, like paper format questionnaire, just sitting down on the gym floor and almost like just stumbling my way through this questionnaire. And I remember thinking to myself halfway through this interview, just going, there is no fucking way that these people are signing up. Like this sucks. Like I wouldn't even sign up to my own service the way this is going. And so that was a bit of an eye-opening experience, like obviously, understanding that there's a level of business that comes along with the coaching as well. And you've got to find a really nice balance between the two to, I mean, not only coach people well, but create buy-in for the clients that are undertaking your services. So yeah, I'm not much of a salesman because like sometimes it feels like it comes off a little bit cringy. But at the same time, like I think I've learned across the journey that you need to be able to have a conversation that's convincing enough to have people like employ you because you know that the service that you're providing is a really good service.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I,
yeah.
and I think like you hit something key earlier, like realizing as a trainer or a coach that everybody has a different goal is super important because I think we were discussing this earlier as well off mic that a lot of people don't know the fitness side of things. They're not trained in it, and it's not something that they're as passionate as about maybe than you are or than me. So like some people just don't care.
Mm,
They know they need to stay healthy, or they know that the gym is good for them, and 2, 3 times a week or whatever is what they should be doing. But
mm.
that's why they come and see someone like yourself or whatever, right? So because I think to the listener right now that might be a trainer or even like somebody who just goes to the gym, at what point did you realize that everybody has these different goals? Because I think as a trainer that's a key moment, like until you realize that not everybody wants to come to the gym 5 days a week, like I don't think you're going to be a successful PT. You know what
Right,
I mean?
right.
Like you're going to be pushing. So when did you realize that in your career, and how did that kind of shift your perspective and your coaching style?
I think through speaking to people and listening to them as well, because I think early days, like I would get all this feedback from people of what they wanted to do, and then still just kind of, I guess, package it in a way that suited my training style, you know, which is, I mean, I think that's the telltale sign of just being early in the journey, and getting into something because you're passionate about it. And then, things coming full circle eventually and going, look, I actually need to be a little bit more of a generalist when it comes to coaching, training, and rehab, simply because if I keep on continuing down the path of just training people to get jacked, I think at the end of the day, people like maybe aren't happy with that level of service. So it's and also through personal experience as well. I mean, for like a long time I was training just to get bigger, and look better, And once again, not from a vanity standpoint, but just how it actually made me feel. And even peeling it back. I mean, like I said initially, like I've trained consistently for a long period of time, and being in relationships or outside of relationships or different parts of the world, I think people latch on to the idea of training to kind of appease like the position they're in at that point of time. Whereas for me, it was quite different. It's just been something that's been steady throughout the journey. Um, but through personal experience and learning things along the way, working with other coaches as well. Um, and I like the idea of being able to um, like help people as much as possible, like within my skill set, rather than being sort of like a specialist in one corner. And we need specialists, of course. Um, but particularly when you're working with Gen Pop athletes as well, who are just humans at the end of the day, you kind of need to have a well-rounded skill set. Otherwise, you can't really, get people to where they want to be in the most efficient manner possible. Um, but yeah, and I suppose, yeah, like I said, through personal experience, particularly because there's been phases of training for myself that have not gone so well.
Right.
Um, like made so many fucking mistakes, hey, like fucked everything up.
Yeah.
And I like to think of it as well is that actually shapes your ability to provide a good service for your clients is
Mm.
making all these mistakes.
Yeah.
And I say to people when I first jump on calls is, look, I've fucked everything up along the journey so that you don't have to, and you can learn from my mistakes. So that's definitely, I think, something that's allowed me to sort of provide a bit more of a well-rounded service and upskilling as well. Yeah, so I think probably the biggest mistake I made early days was thinking that I knew everything. Um, and whether it's like this sort of masculine, like macho approach of, um, you know, like I know what to do in the gym, like I'm human, I can, you know, um, it was just such an oversight on my behalf. And I look back now and I just think like the amount of years that I wasted thinking I was maybe a little bit ahead of where I was at that point in time. Um, yeah, I would say somewhat cost me a little bit. Yeah. But thankfully, we came around, and got some really good coaching and advice from people that I look up to in the industry and stuff like this. But shit, man, it's just a long way of like sort of
Yeah.
long way of saying you just sort of like pick things up
Yeah.
over the journey.
Absolutely. One thing that like I think is common though that I'd be interested to hear your take on
Mm,
is motivation because I
mm,
think like that's something that I've gotten asked even now as a physio like how how do I stay motivated? I don't want to go to the gym. I'm tired, like how do you go after work? How do you go before work or whatever? And I think that's a very, very common thing. Like we're living in a world where everybody I feel is getting busier and
mm,
busier.
mm,
They have so much going on. And I think, like we were saying before, fitness or going to the gym is just like not something that a lot of people like to do. They know that they might have to do it, or, being active is good for their overall health. But what do you tell people when they are, let's say, lacking motivation or like, how do I just go to the gym?
yeah. It's a great question, man. It's almost a
Mm.
$1 million question,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
Um, I think I think the first point you want to land on, which I actually find one of the most motivating factors for the people we work with, is having a plan or like a bit of a blueprint to begin with. So the people that find it really hard to buy into like this idea of training and being consistent in the gym, I think I think they're just lost, foundationally. So number one, it's not having a plan and that plan adhering to a set of goals that they're looking to achieve. Because if there's not this sort of, I guess, this position or this goal that you're striving towards, then you're just sort of rocking up for no reason. Yeah, and like I say it with a lot of people that we work with, and being on the gym floor a lot, you see it with people that walk through the turnstiles or through the gates. People without a plan essentially like look around, at a bit of equipment, at like wondering what they're doing on the day. Yeah. Quickly beeline it to the treadmills, which I think is a good move anyway, just to sort of build into the workout or something like this. But then they sort of peer around the gym and they stand out like dog's balls, man. Like when they're sort of, they're unsure of what they're doing for that particular day. They spin the legs over for about 10 minutes and then they walk out. Um, so I think motivation from the very ground floor stems from actually knowing what it is that you need to do, but also knowing what it is that you want to do, and just rocking up. So I think that's like something at least that I experience a lot, and particularly with the conversations I have with people, particularly people that have gone from a position of not feeling motivated to feeling motivated, is that missing link was just like knowing what it is you need to do. The gym can be quite an intimidating place as well. So there's a lot of obstacles or hurdles that you have to overcome in order to actually, sort of build into consistent training. But I can't imagine how much more intimidating it would be if you've just got no idea. I mean, sometimes I feel a little bit intimidated about going to the gym, maybe a new gym or something like that. And gym anxiety is a real thing, particularly when gyms are. I mean, they're packed these days, particularly down the bay. It's turning into a bit of a zoo
Yeah.
in peak hours, right?
I hear a couple hundred
Yeah, at
sometimes.
least,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's one of these things where, if you don't have a plan, um, it can be a really daunting experience. Um, so I think that's what I lean into early days is just making sure you're set up and you have something that you're striving towards. And then having someone in your corner as well, so creating like a sense of like accountability. So whether it's a training partner, a coach as well, but someone that's buying into the process with you can be motivating at times because you feel like you've got someone in your corner. And to not adhere to the plan that you've both set out to achieve is actually letting them down in a way, you know, like not just letting yourself down, which is is what's happening if you choose not to do what it is you've set out to do. So yeah, I think there's a couple of ways. There's a few probably like motivational quotes in there and discipline, this and that. But like, yeah, like practically, which is how I like to speak, like putting things in place so that you don't just have to rely on waking up and feeling like, I'm in the mood to train today versus I don't want to go to the gym. It's just like, this is part of the routine. Like, this is the structure of my life. I identify as someone that goes to the gym versus, yeah, sort of just waiting for the right time to come. Because that happens a lot. And I'm sure you see it as well with the physio clients and stuff that you work with. Um, People rely on these golden moments to take advantage of. But life is just it's too chaotic.
Yeah. And I think when you've done something long enough, like this topic has come in the past as well. And once it becomes habit, like it just doesn't feel like it's an issue anymore. Like you were saying, it's part of your identity sometimes. And okay, every morning I'm gonna be at the gym from this time to this time. Like it's just so structured that like me, I on the weekends, for example, like that's probably classically when I have time to socialize a bit more, but I won't make plans for coffee if I know that I'm going to be training at that time or
Mm.
whatever. Like it's just such part of my identity or a habit that, like I think there's ways to work around other things. And I think again, if you've like been consistent enough and it starts to become habit, then you don't even really need to be motivated anymore.
Mm.
It just like is something that's part of your day. But I think like you've also hit a key topic that the gym can be intimidating. Like
Mm.
for the listener right now that is one of those people that walks in and maybe doesn't have a plan or doesn't know what to do, because I think it's very common too to see all of this equipment and to go to the gym or to go to wherever it might be. There's more and more things popping up. You don't know how to use this, you don't know how to use that, or like what exercises to do. Where can people go, or I guess get a bit more educated to learn what to do and to kind of create a plan? Because I think for the listener, even the thought of hiring a personal trainer can be intimidating. They don't want to stand out or they don't want to be embarrassed. So if the listener right now is not ready to go through that route, where can somebody go? Because again, we've talked about this in and then off mic as well. There's so much information out
Mm.
there, short form content, long form content. Where do you recommend people learn?
Shit, man. I mean, I'm biased. Get a coach.
Yeah.
Honestly, get a
Yeah.
coach.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think like it's an investment, not an expense. Getting a coach, and so if you feel like you're in a position where you are intimidated or you are anxious, a lot of that boils down to, at least in a gym sense, just not knowing what you're doing. Like I would feel quite intimidated or anxious about rewiring the house, if something had gone wrong with the electricity or something like this. You know what I mean? Like it makes perfect sense to actually call the Sparky and get them out to do something that they're good at and passionate about, potentially. So that would be my first stop. And it's not a personal plug either. I mean, finding a coach, like sometimes a little bit of trial and error, much like finding a good physio, a good chiro, a good doctor. Um, you've got to, you've just got to try things. But really, I think, not doing that in the short term, I think is prolonging the inevitable, which is if you're not um, like it's not people's job to know a lot about training, yeah, unless they're genuinely interested. Um, which is a conversation for another point because a lot of people think they know what they're doing as well, yeah. Um, but I just think it's such like a great experience, at least in the early stages of entering the gym space and fitness space, simply because I think it saves you time in the long run. So if you can get a really good handle on the things you're doing in the interim, then on the back end, I mean, you get to self-manage things for the rest of your life because you've learnt the basics of how to manage your fitness, your nutrition, and your lifestyle. Um, and it doesn't have to be like specialized control, just very general sort of things, which essentially, I guess, caters for majority of the outcomes that you're looking to achieve anyway. But yeah, I tend to, and it's once again, it's not a sales pitch, but it's almost like save yourself the time, yeah, and actually either um, like seek someone who knows what they're doing, yeah, and that could be a training partner as well, like a friend that's been going to the gym for a while, um, and allowing yourself to sort of like a little bit more of a less stressful like introduction to getting into the gym. Um, that's probably what I would lean into as early as possible. Versus, I mean, we touched on it before. You can learn a lot of good things on social media. So TikTok, Instagram, these sorts of things. YouTube, definitely. But if you're not experienced in the gym space, then, I mean, like we've spoken about, it can be really hard to decipher what's good information versus what's absolutely
Yeah.
shite.
Exactly.
And there's so much bullshit out there.
Yeah.
And I would know because I've tried it all,
Mm. Mhm.
particularly up until the point I'm at now. And it's only over being quite passionate about like the subject matter that you start to realize maybe what's not important to you. But for the average punter, I mean, you just take in so much stuff, um, and you like it's not your own. It's not your fault essentially, but it can come at your own demise, and that might be running into hurdles, injuries, overtraining, just ending up in positions that are maybe not so favorable to the goals that you're looking to achieve. Yeah. So yeah, I would lean into at least getting some guidance as early as possible, which is something that, like I said before earlier, it's something I wish I did at least a decade before I decided to pull the trigger.
And I think you hit something key, like it's a good overall investment. Yes, in your time, but also controversial, like your money, Like I think too, you can spend so much time wasting your money, like if you're like you're saying going for just 10 minutes or just going on the treadmill for 20 minutes and then walking out because you're not doing like you're paying a membership fee for what? You're not getting a whole lot out of that. Um, but also in the long run, too, like even from the physio side of things, like if you're going to see, let's say, a physio or a trainer more frequently earlier on when you should be, you might need to then see them a little bit less, right? Because you're learning, because you're getting better or whatever. Whereas if you wait, you're paying all of those membership fees, wasting your money there, and then buying, whatever package from a trainer or seeing a physio and need to see them for a bit longer, spending your money there. Like I think in the long run, we're wasting our money on other things and oh, I can't afford seeing a physio or seeing a trainer or whatever. Well, again, like if you can invest in your health, then I think you're probably budgeting a little bit. You should probably take a look at your budget, I think, right? And I think like I cannot speak for a male or a female that has two kids and a mortgage and all of this other things. I totally understand there are things that that me being a 30-year-old single male that I don't need to do and pay for, right? I totally understand that, but I still think that it's an investment, and if you can invest in your health, then I mean, again, you should really be rethinking a few things.
Yeah, and it's not like we're trying to tell people how to live their lives.
Hmm.
Um, but I just consider the inefficiency in the long run of not like learning the basics as early as possible. At least in our business, and it might seem like a bit of a broken business model, but like we're not looking to have clients, like single clients on our books forever. Um, like that'd be nice because we actually enjoy working with
Yeah.
everyone we work with.
Yeah.
Um, but like we actually want to like equip people with the tools to self-manage these things moving forwards. Um, and so I think when people like actually take that into consideration as an outcome of good coaching, then it becomes like less of an idea of like spending money versus like this is a good investment and this will save me time and money in the long run. And I hate the idea of like time lost to shit decisions because I've done a lot of that over the journey, like particularly through my 20s. Um, like poor decisions around training, poor decisions around nutrition and lifestyle. And I hate to be like cynical when I'm looking back at that stuff and
Yeah.
reflecting, like you
Yeah.
said, um, because you sort of get caught up in this idea of like, shit, if I hadn't have done this stuff, like imagine where I could be. But I think it's also like just part of the learning process. But yeah, not being because like that was one of the considerations for myself personally back in the day as well. Was I feel like I know everything, um, and like I don't feel like I need to be investing too much money into coaching and this sort of thing. And the answer was sitting right in front of me, to be honest, because I was spending a lot of time rehabbing terrible injuries that were, you know, uh, poorly managed. Um, at no one else's fault but my own, and just being stuck in this position of making poor decisions and not learning from them. Whereas I guess, yeah, that's I guess what our business and the service that we provide is sort of is born from is like sort of shaping the way we come across to people as what I wish I had sitting in front of me when I was going through those times. Um, and whether that's very early days of just having no idea what I was doing, and just seeing the magazines and then just training like a dickhead and doing all this stuff versus being stuck in periods of rehab, um, feeling broken for long periods of time, um, feeling trapped, all this sort of thing. Now looking back at it and going like all of these like phases, like maybe they don't get skipped, but they're the severity, or the significance of those experiences is diminished, and you can actually move past those sorts of things. So yeah, time lost, and time is money at the end of the day. So it's you want to you just yeah, making good decisions. I think is something we should strive to do. But once again, not telling people how to live their lives. It's a personal decision. Um, but yeah, in like from what we've seen at least, and yourself included, it's like it makes more sense than not to at least get a little bit of a grip of things as early as possible.
And I think it's
Yeah.
one of those things too, like you were saying, you look back and like I'm quite similar in the sense like with long distance running, with triathlon, like before I got Fraser, shout out Brandon, as
Shouts out.
coaches, like I I mean, like, again, I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew how to train for a marathon. I thought I knew how to do this and that, but really until I got my coach, I realized, oh, I didn't. Like I now like too, it's a lot easier on my life. Like I don't have to plan what I'm doing. Like having somebody else, like if we talk about people being so busy, like I log into the app and Fraser's posted my like run for the day, or like Brandon what I'm doing for in the pool or whatever. Like it's just so much easier in that regard. And like I trust that they know they're trained in what they're doing.
Mhm.
They have a lot more knowledge than me, of course. So, like, I trust that the reason why I'm getting better and why my performance is getting better is because, you know, I don't have to worry about like actually sitting down and strategizing over the next month, which I never did to that extent, right? Which is what a coach would do for you. Like, I think to the listener listening right now, when you're going to see, I'm thinking back to my personal training days, or even now as a physio, like, there's a lot of time taken for, a plan. Like, I think the good trainers actually will sit down and plan, okay, this is what I'm doing in a session. Like, I can sometimes, if I'm floating through the gym, um, can tell which trainers are planned and which ones aren't, because, the ones that have a plan know exactly where they're going, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the ones that don't are kind of like looking around, oh, what am I doing next with the client, yada, yada, yada. So like I think too, it if you're worried about your time and like what to do, just know that like there's a lot of effort that's being put behind the scenes
Mm.
by a trainer. So in the long run, it saves you, like you're saying, time is money. It saves you time as well.
Yeah, and we consider like this sort of stuff decision fatigue. So essentially, like a lot of people get trapped in these positions of not knowing what to do, and it becomes quite like tiring and consuming. This exists a lot around nutrition as well. So making decisions outside of the gym, which is where I think having someone in your corner, whether that's a coach or a friend, um, but someone who's batting for you essentially can sort of take on some of that emotional workload, um, just so you can think less about the things that you don't you don't need to think about so much. And all of this ties back into having a plan in front of you. Having some structures, some routines, and it can look quite different for a lot of people. But at least being grounded in some level of consistency across the week, um, it makes life feel like so much less stressful, so that you can devote that energy towards things that probably require that energy, which is maybe you've got a family, or maybe you're playing sport and you need to think about like the sport itself rather than the training. And then training can exist as something that you show up, you tick the boxes, satisfy the criteria, and then move on with your life. Um, and decision fatigue is a massive thing, which is actually why, like, I've had a lot of coaches in the past that I've worked with too, simply because I also consider it like almost personal development in a way. So like they're coaching you, but you get to learn at the same time as well. And I think the best services or the best businesses are the ones that actually um, invest in, I guess, pulling a lot of good things out of other businesses,
Mm.
not stealing them,
Mm.
but it's like learning
Yeah.
like how the show runs.
Taking inspiration.
Correct. And
Yeah.
then how that applies to like your own skill set and your own values so that you can continually get better and then provide a better service for your own clients. Um, yeah, man, I definitely piggybacked on what you were saying about the decisions and all this sort
Yeah.
of stuff, but it's a real thing which we see a lot.
And I think like that decision fatigue is a huge reason like group classes are so massive and
Mm,
they're getting bigger and bigger. And I think like in my mindset, a huge reason is because of that decision fatigue. Like you being able to go to a class, going to a revel or the yard or whatever, and have everything planned for you. You know, I'm only going to be there for 45, 60 minutes and be told what to do. I think for a lot of people is super important. They don't want to head to the gym and like, you know, have to plan themselves or whatever, right? So I think that's why. And thinking back to me when I was, you know, 19 and I first started going to the gym, like I did CrossFit for 10 years. And I think a big reason was because A, I didn't know what to do. And B, I could go. I had a coach tell me exactly what to do. And I was golden, really. So I really agree with that decision fatigue. But I want to get into I've seen you make a few posts and I'm quite as a physio, quite interested because you know, being a physio and being kind of the physio as well, like I think a lot of the times when it comes to people who come to see a trainer or see a coach or even me as a physio, you know, they might have a niggle, they might have an injury, or, you know, I know if you work with an athlete or something like that, they're always like athletes always have something
for
going
sure.
on. And I don't believe that people, and this is coming from a physio, that people need to stop at any means when they're going through an injury or whatever. I don't even think, again, this is where the anti physio comes in. I don't even think you need to necessarily get hands on treatment a lot of the times, right? So, to that person listening right now that might be dealing with something and maybe that's hindering them from coming to see a trainer or going to the gym or whatever, how can somebody, um, how can somebody kind of work through an injury in the gym? And what are some strategies that you apply there?
It's a great question.
Mhm.
I love this topic.
Yeah,
Yeah, because everyone like in essence is dealing with something.
yeah.
Like you said, I think stopping is the last resort, like the absolute last resort, because like the way we view things at least is the poison is actually the antidote, you know? So if you want to do so, like running, for instance, because everyone's dealing with something when they run, they go too hard too early. Um, the last resort should be stopping running entirely because otherwise you decondition yourself. Um, I mean, not only from an aerobic and fitness standpoint, but also like a physical standpoint. Um, and it's also like the emotional toll that it takes on people when you pull back from something that you want to do. You know, so last resort is stopping altogether, but then also just accepting the idea that pain is very normal and everyone experiences pain to some degree. And the phenomenon is not only physical, it's very much this multifactorial um, experience that people go through. Uh, you know, like the psychological experience of pain is really powerful as well. We know this. Um, so maybe I think disconnecting or at least having conversations with people about what pain actually is, which for us is information and data points in a way. Um, because I think as soon as you're too reactive when it comes to pain or the experience of discomfort, I think you can really instill this sense of like fragility in people and this level of like brokenness. And like quite simply put, I mean, if you've experienced a massive trauma, like you fell down a flight of stairs, you've been involved in a significant accident or something like this, then that's grounds to maybe pull back to the point where you stop training. That's completely understandable. But within a gym sense, and it doesn't happen that often, um, injuries are often quite sinister in nature. Like the level of pain and discomfort just gradually gets more noticeable over time. Like they're quite easy to fix, but it's all about expectations. Um, through being an early to mid 20-year-old and being able to like fuck myself up in the gym and then wake up the following morning feeling absolutely fine, you really get this like false sense of security. And so that was my expectation for a long time, was like pain's just going to disappear overnight. Like it'll vanish,
Yeah.
right? Um, and actually leaning into an experience I had in my mid 20s when I think everyone has this first significant injury that they experience and they can go back to this point in time. And I was training at the gym-goer actually when this happened. And I said to my training partner at the time, I think it was maybe 24, 25. And I said to him, like, how good is training when you're not injured, man?
Yeah.
Like how fucking good does it feel to just go to the gym every day, just send it and make gains? And that exact day, like, yeah, and honestly, I feel like that sort of interstellar moment, like looking through the world, just going like, brother, shut your mouth. Like, don't say that shit. Ended up doing a shoulder press, um, you know, probably too heavy for the position I was in at that time. And like tweak my neck sort of thing and like standard procedure, like all good. Like feel shit now, can't turn my head, but like tomorrow morning it'll feel better. Um, didn't feel better the next morning. Um, the following morning didn't feel better. And it sort of went from like days to weeks to months, and purely from like complete mismanagement. Like I just had no idea what I was doing in terms of how to like approach this sort of situation, which now is quite easy. Like something like that is less than a week, to actually get back. But just being like young and dumb, um, and a bit of a bro, and not wanting to pull back at all. I think that's something that really set me up for a long time of like missed opportunities in the gym, is not managing loads. And so load management is obviously something that is, yeah, almost one of the guiding principles for how we approach training, um, and even life in general, because everything is load. But yeah, just sort of taking all of this into consideration, and not being so um, like destructive with your thoughts, or um, like I think everyone is really sensitized to pain these days, and catastrophic when they actually like encounter the experience. So we like to almost consider it very objectively. Like, this is just something that is completely normal, something at some point that you're going to experience. Like, and if you choose to avoid pain, you're never going to do anything special, you know, and that I guess exists around training and life. Um, but yeah, it's like approaching it reactively, I think is great. So sort of like coming to terms with what it is you're experiencing, and then just creating a roadmap to go from where you're currently at, um, to where it is you want to be, and having pain and rehab exist on the same continuum as high performance, rather than separating the two of them and then feeling almost defeated from the very start because you're in the rehab group. You're a bit broken at this point, so you go to the left and then our performers go to the right, whereas we kind of just like to plot people on the continuum. And then it sort of sets people up to just focus on like performance from the very beginning rather than focusing on just rehab. because I've been stuck, like I said, for a long time in these rehab cycles, and you know, you seek the best physios, the best chiros, the best sports doctors, um, and you expect to get fixed on the table in that session, which is actually quite frustrating for the physios, you know, or the professionals, because majority of the work, actually all of the work, really, um, happens outside of the clinic or off the table because you didn't get broken on the table. So I think, yeah, there's so many different layers to this sort of thing. Um, but I think particularly as you experience in the clinic as well, and what we experience in the gym too, um, I like to just have very open and honest conversations about how people can manage these situations and attack what you would consider like low hanging fruit. You know, so what can we address that is clearly um, not even a red flag, but maybe just an area that we can improve on to then move you out of pain or discomfort and I guess towards the things that you want to be focusing on. Um, yeah, because there's just nothing more depressing than being in pain and waking up in the morning. And the first thing you think about, which was me for a long time, it's like you wake up, the first thing you think about is, how's my back feeling today? You know, or my neck. And you turn your head and you feel it and you go, fuck me, like another day in paradise.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, yeah. And going through those, I think that's how I at least landed in this, like in this rehabby sort of space, like rehab performance space was purely out of like spending a lot of time in shit positions. Um, and like we've said many times, like just making terrible decisions and not acting on this stuff, and sort of trying to self manage it without any idea of how to manage it in the first place. Yeah, yeah. I think that's where, like, I guess the most powerful things happen is maybe reframing pain and rehab, um, and really leaning into this sort of like anti fragile approach. Yeah, being a little bit more disconnected from considering pain to be something that only affects me, you know, and and creating just that map of moving away from the position you're in, usually focusing on performance.
Mm.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think like you hit a bunch of key points there. Like, yeah, pain and like reframing pain, rethinking pain, but also realizing that again, like deloading. I always like tell people if you ever go to see a physio or a chiro or whoever and they tell you to stop doing something or stop moving, then pay your money and maybe book in with somebody else. Like
Get the
I
fuck
think
out of there.
exactly. Like I think like there's no scenario. I shouldn't say there's no scenario. Like you're saying, if you've had a massive trauma or something, then yes, you might need to pull yourself back. Um, but even like in this day and age, I think too, like I know you, listener, are probably, I know more than 60% of the listeners are in that 28 to 34 range. And I think in this day and age, a lot of us are seeking the alternative health side of things. We're not seeking that conventional, oh, I get injured, I'm going to go to the doctors and like see their opinion, because I can tell you, I have few of my best friends are doctors and they tell me all the time the lack of training that they have in human movement. And I think like again that just goes to the new generation of doctors. They know when to refer, who to refer to. Um and that they don't know everything, but I think too, like if you rethink things, like it becomes a less depressing. Like if you are in the journey that you are in and you start liking fitness and you start liking movement, I think there's nothing worse getting injured and then being depressed that you can't go to the gym, however often that you are. Because I think for a lot of people too, it's good for your mental space. Like a lot of people, it's a relaxing kind of, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but
Mm.
like it's good for their overall like mental side of things as well. And I think back to a few years ago where I had like a massive surgery and I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't run. I couldn't do anything for 3 months. And I remember how depressed I was, right? And like I just think too, an injury that you can still do something. If you've hurt your shoulder, you can still do something. You know what I mean? Like, I think for your overall well being, it's still good. Um, and then relaying it back to pain and if you're so focused on pain, it leads to other things as well, like sensitization. And I am always, as a physio, I never refer. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but like if somebody
Mm.
wants, oh, my back hurts, I need to get an MRI. I'm like, well, I'm not going to send you for an MRI.
Good.
Chances are it's going to show something. But like what we know through research, and I can't remember who exactly did this article, but like they scanned 100 backs, and I think more than 50% of people had something showed on the MRI, but like over 50% of those people didn't have back pain. Like
Mm.
your pain doesn't always correlate with what's actually going on.
Mhm.
There's multiple reasons, like you were saying, for pain. So I think like if you rethink pain in that sense, you become less sensitized down the road. And the last thing that you want is working in aged care as well. I work with 80-year-olds that complain about pain constantly. And like, you don't want that, Like, if you are right now listening, you're 28, there's nothing worse being in your 80s and like every day thinking about pain and
Mm.
just being miserable,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, and I think like distracting yourself from being in pain is super important. And a couple of key elements that we like to focus on is what we call graded exposure or load management, essentially, but also training intensity. And I think that's what gets missed in conventional rehab. Um, and graded exposure basically just speaks to the point of like you essentially want to slowly expose yourself to the things that you want to eventually do when you're not in pain. Like we spoke about running or something like this. The classic one is people deadlifting in the gym. They do some dumb shit, their back hurts because of the deadlift. Yeah. Uh, like there's nothing inherently wrong with deadlifting. It was probably poor decision making that led you to that point. So rather than like, and I like to consider this bubble wrap mentality because what happens is you do a deadlift, you injure yourself, you blame the deadlift. But then if you're walking down the street and you trip on a crack, do you blame the footpath and then you stop walking down footpaths? And then all of a sudden everything becomes painful. And if you're striving for a pain-free existence, then you do literally have to cover yourself in bubble wrap and chill on the couch forever. But then, where does that leave you essentially? And the psychological pain of being trapped in that position is, of course, it's overwhelming because you essentially lose movement options. So we like to consider it giving people exposure to the things that they have either gone poorly in the past, yeah, or that they have a little bit of fear around. And it's not to be a prick. Like it's not to, like throw them in the deep end um, and make them feel uncomfortable. But it's actually to show them that exposure to the things that you're fearful of and that you've created psychological like dissonance with is actually super important for you to get back to the position where you realize, no shit, like this is okay to do. So that's the graded exposure side of things. But then, like I said before, the intensity element of rehab is, I think, often a little bit disconnected for what is like valuable to move people forwards. And the classic one, at least for me, is someone goes to a physio to get like a diagnosis or something like this, which is perfectly fine. Um, they get hit with what I call the physio shopping list of exercises that they must do. And this might look like 15 exercises on 3 pieces of paper that they must do daily. Um, and your classic, your crab walks, your banded external rotations, you know them all, your donkey
Banded
kickbacks, your
the polar. Yeah, we can.
yeah, your dead bugs,
Yeah.
or all this sort of stuff. And like it's perfectly fine to be doing this sort of stuff, but I think um, it really like you've got to exist at that point on the continuum for that stuff to be like an acceptable thing to do. And that's almost like the ground floor. Um, and it's not realistic for people to do either. Like if you get hit with these shopping lists, I mean, as soon as you see them, and I see them a lot, but even just, you know, the client or the person going like, fucking hell, like, I'm going to have to cancel a lot in the schedule just to get this shit done every day. But then they start doing this stuff every day. And maybe you feel good because honestly, it's a deload, scaling everything back to just doing crab walks and this sort of thing. But then as soon as you want to take the next step, which I'm sure everyone will want to take from that point, you're underprepared or you're completely deconditioned. So I feel the element of intensity and and hard training is missed in rehab cases. And it obviously depends on what your goal is, whether it is to return to the footy field, to squat heavy in the gym, um, and even just maybe picking the kids up and throwing them around on the shoulders and stuff like this. I think the idea of good rehab is actually progressive in nature and just not just point A to point B, but this graded approach of increasing intensity over time and feeling more capable. Um,
And you don't have to be an athlete, like
no,
I think to the person who are listening right now, like it needs to be specific, like you were saying, and it needs to be graded and all of this kind of thing. Like, you know, I think too, if you are, just your everyday person, you're not playing a sport or anything like that, like it doesn't mean that you can't do these quote unquote specialized things, like these more specific things, because chances are you didn't get injured, on the footy field, or, you got injured from vacuuming or from picking your kid up, or, doing something like that. So all of those require twisting, they require bending, hinging, all of that kind of stuff. So if you're, like you're saying, doing this list of 15 things that aren't specific to how you got injured, eventually, then you're probably just going to go back to this scenario and be back. I think in the long run, if we go back to money, if we go back to time, you're probably saving yourself a whole lot of time and money if you're doing it correctly and specifically that first way. So I think too, like you don't need to be an athlete to be doing these like things that look so daunting maybe to a lot of people. You can still get some great, and you kind of need to get through those kind of things to overall rehab what you're needing to rehab.
it is such a great point. Hey, and I love this idea of being specific, but general in nature at the same time. I think a lot of the outcomes that you gain in the gym are general in nature. Yeah, and then they're applied to specific scenarios. So a lot of this is, it does come back to having conversations with people and educations. And I love how you talk about being far less hands on these days with clients that come through the clinic, because I think then people become completely dependent on you, and you're, if you get spoon fed all your life, you're a baby forever, and you don't want to be that person that relies on someone else to keep your head above the surface. So it's about, I guess, developing the skill set to kind of manage this stuff individually. And I think another one with rehab is it's because we could go on about this stuff all
Absolutely.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. But I think, and the way I think about this stuff as well is people's expectations and timelines around injuries. And like I touched on before, when you're younger, you go to bed thinking you're just going to wake up better the next morning. And then that ends up not being the case. And then you've really got to shift your level of thinking as to um, like what this injury means. And and the first thing people ask is, at least from what my experiences was early days, was how long is this going to cost me? So from D-Day, so from the shoulder press, the first thing I thought was, this is going to take me at least a week, sort of thing. So you start thinking in timelines, and then it takes longer than a week. So you go, oh shit, maybe this is actually like a month injury. Then you get to the month. Oh fuck, like I've done a number on myself here. And so people think a lot in timelines. So having conversations with people about their expectations and kind of what you've seen play out through experience and personal anecdote, I think can set people up for more success because everyone's always in a rush when it comes to this stuff. Fair enough. But if we can sort of just take a little bit more of a broad brush approach, so maybe extend that timeline a little bit longer than what they first or initially think. Um, Maybe initially it's a little bit of a hit to their confidence and what they expected, but in reality, it allows you to have more small wins along the way to eventually get back to what it is you want to do versus telling someone or allowing them to expect the injury to last, for a week, and then it extends beyond that week, and you've already had your first loss. So I think people are a little bit, yeah, just a little bit warped. Their idea of these injuries are a little bit warped in terms of expectations and what they feel is going to happen.
Yeah. And I think like you've hit a few key things there as well, like asking their expectations. Like one of the things that I get asked as a physio probably on day one is, "Oh, how long is this going to take?" And
For sure.
that's exactly what I say is I can't tell you a date, like it could take some people 3 weeks, it could take some people 3 months, I can tell you an estimate, but like there's also other things that can come into play. You're going to continue on your daily life, right? Like we're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have places that we need to, whether it's a stress in your life or all of that kind of comes into play. But I think too, expectations of rehab hopefully is shifting. Like I was saying before, like I know like a lot of the listener base hears that 28 to 34 mark. And I know for me, when I think, I guess as a physio, I'm a bit different in my mindset, but like I know a lot of people know now that you don't necessarily need to get that hands-on treatment, right? Like I can tell you as a physio, like, yes, your neck might feel a bit better for a week and then you might be better in a week, but chances are you were going to be better anyways. Like I might temporarily help you feel. And that's why Enduro Fix, like my business is just telehealth consults because you don't need the hands on kind of stuff. Right. So I think like you hit a key thing there is really trying to sit down before you maybe go and see somebody, for you listening right now, and really think about your expectations. Like what do you want to get out of your rehab? How do you think you're going to get to where you need to get to? And like be open maybe for a different perspective because you might go somewhere and be expecting the physio or even the PT to be stretching you out, to be, doing all these manual things. But I think if you're open to, a different idea or a different perspective, then in the long run, you're probably going to be a lot better. And
Mm.
and I know it's like in health, fitness, everything's kind of coming full circle and, things change and whatnot. I know like 10, 20 years ago, it was all hands-on therapy and then not, and then it's coming back. Like I understand things are changing and evolving, but like I think too, in this day and age, we're all looking for the fancy stuff,
Hmm.
like there's all this equipment coming out. And yes, that's great when it comes to maybe diagnosing or give you an overall idea of maybe why you're re injuring or whatnot. But still, at the end of the day, you're still doing the same work. Like it's still going to be the exercise that gets you better. You know
Mm.
what I
Mm.
mean? Like I can give you a diagnosis. I do give you a diagnosis, but like, what's that really going to do at the end of the day? Not a whole lot, I think.
Yeah, and good rehab is actually just good training. And I like to, I guess, sort of make people aware that you can't you can't like out rehab shit training. Like if you're training like shit, then you don't really have much wiggle room to improve. And so I feel like people view whether it's like these rehab modalities or exercises as like you know the magic pill or something that'll kind of like fill the cracks. But on a macro level, if you're doing too much or making poor decisions, like above the rehab, then it's not going to work long term. And I'm sure you see that a lot as well. I guess a lot of things can be fixed in the clinic or in the gym just by telling someone like, 4 or 5 beers a night probably isn't the best idea. Like pull back on that and see how you feel. Or you're training 7 days a week, yeah, and you expect these like shoulder ERs and this sort of stuff to fix your shoulder pain, when in reality you just probably shouldn't be benching 20 sets a week, sort of thing. So like address the more, I guess, the bigger dials first, and then come back to addressing maybe if you have any limitations and this sort of thing. But like, yeah, I feel like people expect like the rehab side of things to accommodate their poor decisions everywhere else, particularly when it comes to training. Through my own experience and then working with a lot of people who are just gassing themselves, like pushing too hard. And so like viewing like rehab and training as just the same thing, but on that continuum kind of allows you to pull back and go, all right, I think just overall, like maybe I need to just address the stuff I'm already doing rather than plugging in these special exercises that you see on the pieces of paper or on YouTube or something like this, which is somewhat of, I guess, a harsh reality at times. Because, like you said, people love training. I love training. Like, I would love to spend all of my days training. Um, but I guess you've got to find this sort of position of balance where training serves you versus, you know, your your love breaking your heart all the time, because your love for this thing is actually costing you, um, progression and feeling good, which is a heartbreaking, I guess, position that a lot of people find themselves in, myself included at times.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of things do you like to do outside of the gym? Let the listener know.
Like a bit,
Yeah.
yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'm not super interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for putting me on the spot,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, no. I love footy.
Yeah.
Like I love, like I'm a Crows. Like I'm not fanatical, but
Mm.
I'm just underneath the level of
Mm.
fanatic.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty heartbreaking
Yeah.
end to the season this
Yeah.
year, of course.
Pretty hectic
Um,
one.
yeah, and I actually try to sort of separate myself emotionally
Yeah.
from these outcomes,
Yeah.
because it can be quite full on at
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
whether it's watching games or, I mean, even the other day during trade period, and
Yeah.
Archie doesn't go through, and
Yeah.
I'm fucking fuming, and like, it kind of it screws up your day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was earlier in the season. So the Crows, I think, were 3-0 at this stage.
Mm.
And I expected us to do pretty well this season. Like I bought into the idea of us doing quite well.
Yeah.
And then we played Gold Coast in Gold Coast. I think it was round 4. Do you follow the
Mm.
footy? Are you a Crows guy? Or
No, I don't follow it, but I know
yeah,
through the media and
of
through
course.
work, everybody follows it. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember it was in round 4, and we had a really close loss to Gold Coast on the Gold Coast, and a decision late that didn't go our way. And this was a Saturday afternoon game, and I was actually watching it by myself on the couch, like sweating and like shaking, just watching this game. And the game finished, and like it like fucked up the entire afternoon for me. And so I went for a walk to try and like decompress and just compose myself. And it was like a sunny day, like really nice day. Like I should be in a good mood. And on that walk, towards the end of the walk, I love walking, by the way, and listening to podcasts. But by the end of that walk, I decided that I'm not going to let footy be something that comes between me and my mental state. I mean, for the people around me as well. Like my fiance Mira, she's a Port supporter, and like, how does that happen? Like getting her in from Sweden, and that was in 2019 when the Crows were stinking it up, and the
Yeah.
Port were really powerful at that point.
Yeah.
And she said, like, there's no way I can go for the Crows.
Yeah.
Like they fucking suck,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. It's like, are you willing to come with me to the dark
The
side?
dark side.
Yeah, couldn't do it. But yeah, so there's that little bit of,
Mm.
I guess, like you do have to kind of separate your emotions sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
when it comes to sport. But yeah, love walking, love the
Mm.
beach.
Mm-hmm.
I love hanging out, like with mates. Like I do love like a beery sort of
Yeah.
thing, particularly in the summertime. But I love training, hey. Like I think, and people obviously have their own ideas around this about sort of separating yourself and being like a little bit more diverse,
Yeah.
um, which is totally fine. Like I completely agree to a certain extent, um, but yeah, like I'm very cruisy, like, but I fucking love training, hey.
And I don't think like I
Yeah.
think too for a lot of people, like a lot of us, that is our outside of work,
Mm,
or that is our happy place in
mm,
a sense, like I'm the exact same boat. I do have friendship groups who don't necessarily like the whole health and fitness side of space, and that's great, but like at the same time that's such a huge part of my life, right?
mhm.
So a lot of my social outings are at the run, in my team, or like this and that. So I think like that's a very fair answer, really.
Yeah, it is. I got into a bit of running as well
Yeah,
recently
yeah.
too. Actually enjoyed it probably more so than I thought I was
Mhm.
going to. It was quite trendy maybe two
It's
years
still
ago.
so
Yeah,
trendy.
it is
Yeah,
super trendy.
yeah.
And I think it sort of chewed a lot of people up and spat them out, myself included. And I sort of rode that wave for a bit. And I still run now, but very, very casually, more so as like a social experience, another excuse to grab a coffee sort of thing on a Sunday. Um, but yeah, that's something else that we do a little bit of. But yeah, just relaxing, man, just
And
enjoying
where can people find you and follow you?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on, I guess Instagram is the
Yep.
best place.
Cool.
Yeah, so I do my best at being somewhat
Okay.
consistent. Yeah, on Instagram, it's a tough ask at times.
Yeah.
Social media is almost a full-time job these days.
I know.
So yeah, Instagram
Mhm.
is a great one. At Ollie Peake
Okay.
is my personal one,
Mhm.
and then at Peake Performance.
Cool.
So
Okay.
that's Peake with an E,
Okay.
which is my surname.
Yeah.
Is another place to find us.
Cool.
And yeah, obviously, like probably where we're most active on,
Yeah.
outside of emails and
Yeah.
stuff like this. But yeah, super easy. Just shoot us a DM.
There you go.
Yeah, have a chat
Yeah.
and see where we land if that's something you're interested in.
And that'll be in the show notes.
For
So
sure.
you can definitely check that out. Thank you for coming on. I think this
Appreciate
was
it.
amazing. And hopefully to you listening, I think have gotten a lot from today's episode. Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you, Ollie.
Amazing. First podcast ever done.
There you go.
Checked it off.
On the resume. To all of my people out there that are driven and goal oriented, you probably already know the importance of reflecting, about reflecting on your failures, about reflecting on your successes, and how that can shape your future. I am somebody that loves journaling. I have tested out and I've used numerous journals. I've probably spent hundreds of dollars on journals, finishing a journal and moving on to the next one. The issue is that some journals have aspects to it that I love, but then other things that I don't use and I don't think are effective. Another issue is a lot of journals are just the same activity every day for 50 days or whatever, and I don't feel like I'm getting much between day 1 and day 50. That is why I created my own journal called The Courage to Be Seen. This journal is a 20-day experience. My goal of this journal is to allow you to really reflect and look over your lifespan of stories and things that have shaped you to who you've become now. Reflecting on experiences, reflecting on your journey to help rewrite your future. This journal is coming out very soon. Be sure to follow The Courage to Be Seen on Instagram to stay updated when the journal release date is.